Hi, and welcome to part one of my tutorial series. I'm Devin. I'm the creator of the Naval Battles customizable card game, and I am here to talk to you about the game. This will be a 6-part tutorial series. The first part is just to introduce the game and talk about the premise of the game, and I will talk about terms that are used throughout cards in the game and the tutorial itself. Part 2 of the tutorial series will include the cards. We'll talk about card types, 6 main card types, parts of the card, what they mean in different places. Card subtypes will go into detail. We'll talk about card icons and icon abilities that will appear on some cards throughout the game. Part 3 will be playing the game. We'll talk about the 4 golden rules of the game. We'll talk about constructed format, how to build your decks for constructed, and how to set up to play the game. We'll talk about turn structure and phases, and then playing resources and constructing and deploying units. Then part 4 will go into the effect chain. We'll talk about what uses the effect chain, and then we'll talk about instance and fast effects and how all these work together on the effect chain. Part 5 will go into combat and weapons. So we'll talk about conducting combat and the steps that you have to take to actually conduct combat. We'll talk about direct fire weapons. Direct fire weapons are ones that you just tap to use, basically, like a fast effect. And then we'll talk about damage and repair, how things get repaired in the game. Then in part 6, we'll talk about the cube game, talk about setting it up, we'll talk about card rarity, shuffling and creating your cube packs, which is very essential for playing the game. Then we'll talk about drafting packs and building decks with your play group, and then playing the cube. Now, the cube requires 6 players in order to play. However, the game can be played one-on-one or with smaller groups if players choose to do so. So the premise of the game is that you are an admiral aboard a flagship cruiser, and you represent an autonomous nation, and your objective is to requisition units and protect your resources from enemy hostile forces, and your opponent's out with the same objective. The player who is able to deal enough damage to their opponent's flagship to deplete their hit points to 0 and is the one left standing will win the game. Alright, so next we'll get into the glossary of terms. Now, these terms are used throughout the game in the rules on game cards and will be used throughout the tutorial as well. So first is the flagship. This is your ship, your flagship that you command from. It's basically a virtual ship. Fleet ship is a ship card that's deployed to the battlefield. Ship refers to fleet ship and flagship at the same time. Surface ship is any ship that is on the water. So that is fleet ships that don't include subs, and that also includes your flagship as well. Library, this is your library of plans, and you have 2 libraries in the Naval Battles customizable card game. You have your main library and you have your resource library. We'll talk more about building decks in part 3. And you have your hand. Your hand is your hand of cards that you play from. This is where you start your unit construction and play your other cards. Draw. To draw a card is to draw from either your main library or your resource library. Tap is to turn something sideways, like you're going to use it for something. Different effects require tapping in the game. We'll talk more about that. Construction zone is where you build your units. And a construction item is a unit that's being built in the construction zone. Construction zone items are placed face down and kept hidden until they're deployed. And then deploy is to put it into the battlefield. To counter something is to negate its effect and send the card to its owner's scrapyard. And scrapyard is your discard pile. Battlefield is where the action happens. This is where you deploy your units to. Permanent is anything that's in the battlefield. That includes ships, weapons, defense cards, aircraft, resources. Token can be a permanent or an upgrade. Some ships produce token cards that are like aircraft, and these are considered permanents as well. And some cards will create upgrade tokens that you put on different permanents. Ready. To ready something is to untap it or to turn it upright. So it'll be like, that's tapped, and then that's ready. Target is a permanent construction item where a player's flagship can be targeted by effects. Fire. To fire a weapon is to roll attack defense challenge in hopes to score a hit. Sacrifice. To sacrifice something is to move it from the battlefield and put it into your scrapyard. Gun barrage. When cards refer to the ability gun barrage, that means that you can fire attack equal to that ship's modified attack at a resource or construction item. Intercept. Intercept is blocking. When players do combat and they attack with ships and aircraft, you intercept them. Weapons pylons. This is where you equip your weapons to. Ships have pylons, and your flagship also has 8 pylons that you can put weapons and defense cards on. More about card types in part 2. Hangars are on fleet ships and can equip aircraft. Aircraft carriers have hangars that will take jet aircraft. Most other surface ships can only be equipped with helicopters. Hit points. This is how much damage you have to deal to a permanent in order to destroy it. Attack. When a player attacks, they'll roll attack challenge against the player's defense challenge. Attack can also be attack on a ship or aircraft card. And defense is the contrast. Rolling a defense challenge against an attack. And the defense numbers on ships and aircraft. Damage. Damage is determined on a successful attack. Hull damage. Hull damage will deal the damage directly to the hull of the ship, whether it be a fleet ship or player's flagship. Cripple. To cripple a ship is to deal enough damage that will deplete at least 3/4 of its hit points. Crippled ships can't attack, intercept, launch aircraft, or guided missiles. And we'll talk about more about that in part 5 on damage and repair. A fast effect. These are abilities that typically are tap abilities and activated by tapping the card sideways, like this. Requisition. Requisition is the resource that you use to build your ships and other units and play your cards. And requisition cost is the number that's on the top left corner of the cards that tell you how much requisition you have to pay in order to play these cards. So thanks for watching part 1 of the tutorial series. Be sure to tune in to part 2 where I talk about the cards, card types, and all the different card icons that you will see in the game. Thanks. Bye.